Have you ever felt that you're trying to do way too much? Like you're juggling 100 different things, jobs, relationships, side projects, yet somehow it's never enough. Trust me, you're not alone. We're living in an era flooded with opportunities. Career options, social connections, entertainment choices, you name it. Yet instead of feeling fulfilled, many of us are stressed out, anxious, and far from happy. Why is that? Well, it's because we're trying to handle it all. We're spreading ourselves too thin and in the process burning out. So what can we do? That's where Mark Manson's book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, comes in. Get ready to dive into what this book is really about and why its brutally honest approach might just be the game changer you need to live a more focused, meaningful life. So here's the big question. What do you really want out of life? What's your ultimate goal? The one achievement that you'd want inscribed on your gravestone? Not an easy one to answer, right? Most people aim for vague goals like happiness, a loving family, and a satisfying job. But these generalized desires won't necessarily push you to achieve meaningful success. That's because whatever you choose to pursue in life, it's going to involve a struggle, a real challenge. And if your goals aren't crystal clear, when the going gets tough, and believe me, it will get tough, you'll falter. Let's say you dream of becoming a CEO. Sounds great, right? But the reality is far from glamorous. Being a CEO means putting in 60-hour work weeks, making gut-wrenching decisions, and sometimes firing people. If the idea of overcoming these problems doesn't hold your passion, chances are you'll crumble and give up way before you're successful. The catch is, since struggle is inevitable, you need to pick something that makes the hard work worth it. A struggle that excites you, that energizes you. For Mark Manson, that struggle came in the form of writing. A passion he pursued relentlessly, even when the odds were against him. It was a struggle, but one he enjoyed. And that determination eventually turned his dating advice blog into a massive success. So here's the takeaway. Stop looking for an easy life devoid of challenges. It doesn't exist. And most importantly, you need to learn to say no to all the struggles that don't bring you joy. Be ruthless about cutting out everything that doesn't matter. Focus your energy where it counts, and don't give a fuck about the rest. Suffering and struggle are part of life, and they can even lead to great things. But here's the twist. If your values aren't aligned with what really matters to you, all that struggle will amount to nothing. Let's dive into an eye-opening example related to this. Meet Dave Mustaine. In 1983, he was thrown out of his band right as they were about to hit it big. Angry and humiliated, Mustaine was determined to prove them wrong. He channeled all his pain into forming a new band, Megadeth. And Megadeth went on to sell over 25 million records. Sounds like a happy ending, right? Wrong. Despite his success, Mustaine was never satisfied because he kept comparing himself to the band that had kicked him out, Metallica, one of the greatest rock bands of all time. This brings us to a critical point. Some values are outright toxic. When you measure your success against the success of others, like Mustaine did, you're setting yourself up for disappointment. On the other hand, healthier values can lead to true happiness. Contrast Mustaine's story with that of Pete Best, the Beatles' original drummer, who was also kicked out right before his band skyrocketed to fame. Best was understandably devastated, but eventually he found peace by redefining his values. He prioritized creating a loving family and enjoying a simpler lifestyle over seeking worldwide fame. His story shows us that it's not success alone that matters, but the values by which you measure your success. So here's the lesson. Don't hang your happiness on external measures of success. Shift your focus towards finding values that actually contribute to your well-being. In other words, make sure you're running the right race, not just the fastest one. Before we go any further, if you're finding these insights valuable, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. We dive into life-changing books like this one all the time, and trust me, you don't want to miss out. Let's talk about shitty values, those sneaky little things that we chase, thinking they'll bring us happiness when they often do the opposite. One of the most common crappy values is the pursuit of pleasure. Think about it for a moment. How often do we prioritize pleasure above everything else, mistaking fun and excitement for fulfillment? But here's a cold, hard truth. Chasing pleasure never ends well. It's the main value of people who fall into self-destructive habits, like drug addicts, overindulgent partiers, and compulsive spenders. Studies show that those who rank pleasure as their highest value are more likely to be whacked by anxiety and depression. Another example is material success. Look, there's nothing wrong with wanting nice things, a big house, a cool car, maybe even a Rolex. But if material success becomes your primary value, you're setting yourself up for greater misery. Research shows that after our basic needs are met, additional wealth won't make us any happier. Worse still, the relentless pursuit of more wealth can seriously mess up your life when you prioritize it over more meaningful values like relationships, integrity, and personal growth. So, how do you avoid these shitty values? You need to replace them with more meaningful ones, values that are based in reality, helpful to society, and within your control. For example, honesty. It's something you can control. It's rooted in reality. And by providing accurate feedback to others, it's socially valuable too. Other good values might include creativity, humility, and generosity. Every year, people run marathons for the satisfaction of finishing something difficult and for a good cause. Now imagine being forced to run a marathon without your consent. No matter how well you perform, you'd probably hate every second of it. That's because feeling forced into something kills the joy of doing it. And unfortunately, many people go through life feeling exactly like this, like unwilling participants in their own lives. This victim mentality, where you feel like life is something that happens to you rather than something you create, can seriously derail your happiness. William James, the pioneering psychologist, is a striking example of someone who turned this mindset around. James was born into a privileged family in the 19th century, but he was plagued by illness and failed repeatedly in his early pursuits, including dropping out of medical school. He was so deeply depressed that he considered ending his life. But then, James discovered the work of philosopher Charles Peirce, who argued that we all must take 100% responsibility for our lives. This was the eye-opener James needed. He realized that for so long he had blamed his circumstances, his health and his upbringing for his failures, which made him feel powerless. From that moment on, James decided to take full responsibility for his own life, eventually leading to his fame as a foundational figure in psychology. So, what's the key takeaway here? If you want to change your life for the better, you have to take full responsibility for it. Imagine losing your job, getting dumped, or missing out on a big opportunity. Sure, it would be easy to blame others for your setbacks, but the smarter move is to look at your part in it. Maybe you slacked off, neglected to communicate, or weren't as proactive as you could have been. By owning your choices, you put yourself in a position to learn and do better next time. Now here's a tough pill to swallow. A lot of us cling so tightly to our identities that we end up holding ourselves back. Picture this, you're a senior manager at a big company. You love your title, the power, the respect that comes with it. Then you get an opportunity to rise to the very top. But the catch is, it's super risky. If you screw up, you'll lose everything, including your identity as a senior anything. Most people in this scenario wouldn't risk it. And that's because of what Mark Manson calls his law of avoidance. We tend to avoid anything that threatens our identity, even if that avoidance holds us back. This becomes particularly problematic for creative individuals. Imagine being an artist or a writer who avoids sharing their work because they're terrified of the rejection. If they put it out there and no one likes it, what does that say about them as an artist or writer? Scary thought, right? So they don't try at all. But there's a way to break free from this self-sabotage Buddhism. Weird pivot. Not really. Buddhism teaches that identity is just an illusion. All those labels we give ourselves, rich, poor, talented, untalented, successful or not, are just mental constructs. They aren't real, and they certainly shouldn't rule our lives. By letting go of rigid identities, you open yourself up to live a fuller, freer life. Maybe you've always thought of yourself as a career-driven person, fixated on climbing the corporate ladder. Liberation comes when you step out of that box and give space to other things that bring you joy, like spending time with loved ones or exploring hobbies. Let's face it, no one likes being wrong. However, we've all had to deal with that one person who always thinks they're right, even when it's crystal clear to everyone else that they're not. Annoying, right? The truth is, we can all be that person sometimes. Take, for example, one of Mark Manson's friends who became engaged to a well-liked guy. The fiancé's brother, however, wasn't having it. He was convinced the guy was bad news and repeatedly criticized him, despite everyone else, including his sister, telling him he was wrong. If you don't want to turn into that guy, you've got to start questioning your beliefs. You need to take a good hard look at your assumptions and ask yourself, what if I'm wrong? It's not easy, especially since many of our false beliefs stem from insecurities we don't want to confront. The fiancé's brother might have had insecurities that fueled his dislike for her groom. Maybe he was envious of her happiness because he hadn't found someone special himself. Or perhaps he resented losing her attention. People often cling tightly to their opinions to avoid dealing with personal insecurities. But if you want to avoid toxic behavior, be willing to question your beliefs regularly, even the ones you find comforting. This humility not only helps you grow, but it also makes you a much better and happier person. When we think about romance, we often think about epic love stories like Romeo and Juliet. But let's get real. That's a pretty messed up scenario, a relationship built on secrecy, impulsive decisions, and ultimately it ends in tragedy. Classic love story? Maybe. Healthy relationship? Definitely not. Studies show that romantic relationships can pack a punch similar to a drug hit, triggering intense highs followed by brutal lows. Sure, the highs are fantastic, but what goes up must come down, and with a crash, especially when issues in the relationship aren't addressed. Back in the day, people were more cautious about romantic relationships than we are now. Marriages were often centered on practical needs rather than passionate love, and that in many cases kept things more stable. Today, we've gone in the opposite direction, putting romance on a pedestal. And when the adrenaline rush fades, we're left wondering what went wrong. So what's the fix? Should we play it safe and give up on the idea of romance? Not so fast. Romantic love can be either healthy or destructive, depending on how it plays out. Unhealthy love happens when both partners use the relationship to escape from their personal problems. It becomes a crutch, something to keep the uncomfortable feelings away. But the thing with crutches is, once you start leaning on them too much, you never learn to walk on your own. That's when things go south. Healthy love, on the other hand, is when two individuals are invested in making the relationship work without using it as an escape. Instead of trying to control one another, they support each other, cheering each other on in their personal growth journeys. It's about wanting to build something strong together while respecting each other's boundaries. Death is one of those things we prefer not to think about, but the uncomfortable truth is that it's inevitable. And how we deal with that knowledge shapes the way we live. Anthropologist Ernest Becker, in his influential book, The Denial of Death, unraveled two major concepts. Humans are terrified of dying, and this fear drives almost every aspect of our lives. Unlike animals, we can think about what might happen after we die, and that ability to hypothesize makes death a terrifying concept. To deal with this fear, people often engage in what Becker calls immortality projects, attempts to create something that will outlast their physical lives. Think about it. Why do people strive to build empires, write books, or make breakthroughs in science? A lot of it ties back to a desire to leave behind a lasting legacy. But while chasing immortality might sound grand, it often leads to stress, anxiety, and even destructive behavior. When someone becomes obsessed with being remembered, they might go to extreme lengths that can cause greater harm than good. So here's a game-changing idea. Stop striving for immortality. Stop trying to shape the world in your image. Instead, focus on living well in the here and now. Take pleasure in the present moment, spread kindness, and create joy where you are. You don't need to rule the world to find meaning in your life. And by the way, this philosophy of not giving a fuck shouldn't just apply to death. It's a mindset for your whole life. Stop overextending yourself trying to do everything and please everyone. Focus on a few things that genuinely matter to you, your joyful struggle, your relationships, your creativity, and leave the rest behind. So, to sum it all up, Mark Manson's The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck might seem bold on the surface, but its message is down to earth and crucial for anyone feeling overwhelmed by modern life. Don't waste your energy trying to do everything, be everything, or own everything. The truth is, most of it doesn't matter. Focus on what's meaningful to you, Embrace your struggles, redefine your values, take responsibility, and live in the now. And remember, happiness isn't about having it all. It's about giving a fuck only about the things that really count. Thanks for watching this deep dive into the subtle art of not giving a fuck. I hope you found it as enlightening as I did. If you liked what you heard, be sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you won't miss out on more videos like this. Let's simplify life, one less fuck at a time.